Stacks has got it going on when it comes to culture and benefits. Folks at the firm report fantastic compensation, promotions based on meritocracy instead of tenure. There's a novel idea. A collegial culture with a small office feel, outstanding professional development opportunities, and much more. If you haven't heard of Stacks yet, the firm is a boutique strategy consultancy that focuses on projects along the private equity investment lifecycle. Projects include commercial due diligence, exit planning, value creation for PE portfolio companies, and much more. If a consulting role with this fast-growing firm interests you, see open roles and get your application in at stacks.com. That's STAX.com. Or click the link in this episode's show notes.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. Javeth here, bringing you another episode of Strategy Simplified. This week's episode is led by former Bain consultant and our CEO, Jenny Rae Le Roux. She covers another Money Camp session, this one focused exclusively on investing. So in the session, she covers everything you need to know to kind of form a foundation for your future, including stocks and bonds, real estate, retirement, and a lot more. It's a really fun session. Hope you enjoy.
For those of you that are just joining us, this is Money Camp Session 5. Money Camp Session 1 was an overview of Money Camp. Money Camp Session 2 was on spending less. Money Camp Session 3 was on making more. Money Camp Session 4 was on saving systems. And this is Money Camp Session 5, which is investing. And just to let you know, kind of at a high level, I do not think of investing as a financial phase. Investing is your opportunity once you have achieved financial nirvana, right? Once you have completed the systems that will ensure that you have enough for your life and to pass on in an inheritance to someone that you want to use for legacy, whether it's a family member, whether it's an adjacent family member like nieces or nephews, or whether it's an organization. Everything that we've talked about up until now got us to that place. Investing is when you want to do more or when you want to have more. But it's not for you. When, in my mind, what you do when you are investing is that you either build people, and I'll talk about the way that you do that, or you build places, actual physical places for a purpose on the earth. And I get really excited when we talk about investing, when you think about it like that. So I want to start out today with a poll. We're going to launch this poll. Polls up. I'm just curious to see where you are. I am a good investor. You're definitely a good investor. You're almost there, or you're not yet. So I'll give you about 10 seconds. We've got 81% that have participated already. Awesome. Great. 86%. I'm happy with that N. All right, how about this? I love you, definitely, people. When I was writing this question, I was thinking, how would I answer? And it, you know, one of the challenges is that definitely people probably will align a lot with what I'm talking about today. You are never done investing, but you can be very good at investing if you have systems, values, processes for learning, and perpetual excitement about investing. Then 20% of you said you were almost there. That's awesome. And the almost there probably feels like there's stuff that you still have left to learn, or you're not in a groove. Maybe you've done some investing. Maybe some of it's gone well, some of it hasn't. And then there's the not yet, right? And then 73% of you said not yet. And I'm guessing that that's probably why in every single one of the Money Camp calls we've had, people ask questions about investing, because there's a tremendous amount of interest and appetite around this. And for those of you who are just beginning, or feel like you're maybe just beginning, there can often be an urgency around investing to feel like you want to catch up. And so I'm going to address some of those kind of questions, concerns, thoughts, and feelings as we talk today. So once again, welcome to the call. Before we get started, I want to just give you the opportunity to put one thing that you hope to take away from today in the chat. So as I am introducing myself, I would like for you to just open up the chat. And if there's something that you're like, hey, I would love to take this away from this session today, when you tell us that up front, then we can reorient what we're talking about. We can share additional stories or insights. And sometimes you draw out of us what's really amazing, which is one of the reasons I do these live. We could just film this in a vacuum. I could just sit in my office and film this, but the live experience is what creates real magic for us. So what's one thing that you hope to take away from today? Type that into the chat. Let me just talk about why I am an unusual investor. Okay. I am not interested in having people come and talk to me and become usual investors. You can find, everybody on TikTok, you can work with a standard financial advisor to give you all of the things that I've kind of talked about up until now. Insights on spending, insights on making, and insights on just setting up allocations where you buy a house and you have an IRA and you can put it in things and everything is set up. I am an unusual investor for two reasons. Number one, I finished the early phases, the phases that we've already talked through in Money Camp. And if you haven't heard those, go back and listen to those sessions. I finished all of those by the time I was 25. So I was really good with money and I had saving systems through retirement set up by the time I was 25. I knew what was expected. I knew what I needed to do to have a successful financial life. And success to me meant that I had enough for myself, enough to give away to another generation, and enough to give away during my lifetime. So I got to begin early on investing, which means that I was young and dumb, but I also have a lot of early experiences that really shaped the future of investing for me. That also was really awesome because when I was 25 or 26, I felt like I had my whole financial life ahead of me, which really I largely did. And so when I made mistakes, they did not feel mission critical. And a lot of things that I find when I'm talking to people who are in their 40s or 50s or 60s about investing is that they have negative experiences that often happened when they were in their 30s or their 40s that doesn't feel like the runway is that big. And then they're scared to repeat those issues going forward, which I get. And so I had the privilege of starting early. I didn't have money, but I had systems, right? I didn't have, I wasn't a trust fund kid, so I didn't have that. But I did have the opportunity to learn. I had the discussions. And by the age of 26, I was ready to begin investing. So I was, I think, 25 or 26 when I bought my first individual stock. I was 32 when I bought my first business. I was 30 when I bought my first real estate. And so I got to start early. I mean, that was an advantage. And so one of the things that I'm encouraging people as I'm meeting with them, they always want to put off these things like buying a company or buying real estate early. They want to put it off until they're ready, until later. And I'm just going to encourage you today from the very beginning, start early, because what I realize now, I'm 42. What I realize now is that buying my first business was not buying my business, right? Buying my first real estate was not buying real estate. Buying my first security was not buying a security. So I was learning instead of actually setting myself up for a long-term future. And now I'm buying my 30th, 40th piece of real estate. I'm buying working farms and more complicated pieces of real estate. I'm buying more businesses. I'm focused on growing more businesses, investing in early stage companies. I'm doing all the things that I have now trained myself to do for 15, 16, 17 years. And so the earlier you start, the smaller you start, the more there is for you on the pathway. Also, I've done it all. So I've watched other people, right? I worked for Bain, I worked in their PE firm, and I worked for other startups. And so I learned about funding from the company side, and I learned about it from the advisory side, and I learned about it from the owner side. So I learned about it by watching other people. By the way, learning about it doesn't make you good at it. Very, very key insight. And there are a lot of people who want to learn and learn and learn until they're 100% guaranteed of success. That's the problem, right? The longer you wait, the harder it is to take the leap. I've bought my own. So I directly own my own real estate. I own a ranch. I'm in the process of buying my second one. I have started startups and I've bought companies by acquisition. So I've done a lot of the things that a lot of other people might do, one of or two of, but I've done those in multiples. I have talked about it. And actually, this is one really key insight for me as I'm doing the money camps. I put on another slide here. One of the reasons that I really like doing it is that every time I teach, I learn something. In fact, you guys have asked me questions that have made me pursue financial advice that has changed the way that I think about some of the structure of how we do things in our own family. And so talking about it is part of what's powerful about money. You demystify it, you take away the power of it, and you focus on, hey, family, church, community, on doing money with other people. And it doesn't become siloed. You're not isolated and you're not competitive, right? I am in a race against myself when it comes to money. I will never have as much as the most person on earth, and I will never have less than the least. I will always be somewhere in the middle. And so my only goal is up. Finally, I have run for office. So I've thought about the applications of money and money in these terms, in what we're going to talk about today, investing. What is the purpose of investing? Why should a country or a state invest in something? Investing is often for beyond your lifetime. So governments and nations, I just got back from a 2-week trip to the Middle East, Jordan, Egypt, and Israel. And when I was on that trip, our conversation in almost every country, it was me and 25 other business leaders from Southern California. The conversation with these political leaders and the government leaders and the national leaders of these organizations was, how could we drive more investment in our economy? And so, I've really thought about investing from a lot of different perspectives. And so this is something that I realized as I was pursuing insight. When I would sit down with somebody, I'd sit down with a legal advisor and they would have this much focus, or I'd sit down with a financial advisor and they'd have this much focus, right? Narrow focus on their areas of expertise and what they're paid to do. I'm not paid to do any of this. I'm just interested in it. And so I get really excited about sharing that perspective from you. So if that helps shape your questions as we're talking later, that's why I'm sharing it with you now. Finally, why am I doing this? I got a text message last month that, it made my day, probably my month, and maybe my year. Right. And it was an insight that I had from a one-on-one. So I did a group money camp with a company. Then I did a one-on-one with a number of their people afterwards. And when they sat down and they brought me their numbers, I asked one simple transformative question. And it was about something that was possible with their cars, the ownership of their cars. They, in the course of 3 days, sold a car for more than they owed on it and more than they had paid off 2 credit cards, and began the next phase of their financial journey. It happened in 3 days, right? And it was super transformative for this couple who had both come from other marriages, amazing people that were trying to build a new financial life together. That's why I love this, right? I had the opportunity to change someone's financial life, their life together, and their trajectory. Incredible. It got me so excited. I also want to be a part of raising up great money managers. When I am working with government officials, I would like for them to be good with money. I would like for them to understand money and investing. I would like for the people who manage the $30 million of my local city and the $100 million of my local county and the $2.2 billion of our local regions, I would like for them to be good with money. I would like for them to understand these things, whether I'm doing it or they're doing it on our behalf. And then finally, y'all raise my own standard. Every time I talk about this, one of the reflections that I've had this year is on a verse from the New Testament. It's woe unto those who teach. Right? Basically means that when you teach, you have a higher standard. And I feel that responsibility that when I teach, when I then think about my own financial decisions, the things that I talk about need to be put into practice for myself.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever heard a new digital trend and thought to yourself, okay, does this really matter? Asking the right questions helps you cut through the noise and get down to what matters most. I'm Jim Hertzfeld, host of the What If, So What podcast, where we discover what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real by asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Subscribe and listen, and together we can turn big ideas into tangible actions so you can get shit done.
So some context as we dive into the investing today, then I'm going to go over to the questions and make sure that I'm prepped for when I'm going to answer those, and then we'll dive in. So the money stages, the first one is making more. Then underneath that is spending, saving, and investing. Those are kind of the three core ones in the middle. And then giving. And why do I have them like that? Well, because making more is something that you work on and learn about the whole way through your journey. Giving is something that I believe should begin the first paycheck that you get when you're, my kids are 3, maybe yours was 10 or 12 or 15. But giving should begin then, not when you feel like you have enough, but actually every time you make something. And then spending, saving, and investing are incremental, and you're in one of those phases, but you're kind of really in one of them at a time. Once you graduate from spending, then you move to saving. Once you graduate from saving, then you move to where we're going to talk about today, which is investing. And so let me actually leave this here, and let me just talk about a few of the things in the chat. Here we go. So a few things that people are asking for. Easy guides on investing, simplified in layman's terms. Okay, awesome. I'm going to really highlight the 3 types of investing that you can do, and I'm going to talk about some of the specific details. Awesome. Having more confidence in taking investing risks. I'm about to tell some stories about mistakes that I made. And I just I'm a walking testimony of you will not die if you make a mistake financially, right? But I'm going to talk about obviously how to try to avoid those mistakes. I've hopefully gotten better at doing that later. But if you're investing, the whole premise of it is that you have money that you can do something with, which means that you risk losing it in order to gain. And so you have to take risks investing. That's why it's a separate session versus spending and saving. Spending is having enough for today. Saving is having enough for tomorrow. Investing is having enough to build a community, a city, a state, a country. Investment advice and tips, I can do that. Good learning approach to investing. Stocks. Okay, I'll share a little bit just about how I'm thinking about stocks right now. I'm not going to give stock tips or stock names, but I'm really happy to share my details. They're great. Best ways to invest by also having a full-time job. I'll talk a little bit about passive and active investing. Would love to learn the risks and rewards of various investment vehicles. Cool. I'll talk a little bit about how I think about the returns that I'm looking for when I'm investing in something and why. How to assess where to invest in different paths of investing, such as franchises, real estate, stocks. Yeah, great. I'll talk about all those. I basically talk about securities, about companies, and then about real estate. Risk management and investing. Some of you guys want zero risk investing. I'll tell you what you should do. Nothing. Even if you save, you risk, right? Because you have inflation eating away at your savings. So I'm not going to give you a zero risk way to invest, but I'm going to help you a lot with what I think are lower risk or risk hedging ways to think about it. Demystifying investing because it seems intimidating. It does seem intimidating. It's actually not hard. And so I want to get you guys excited about this. Awesome. Want to invest in stocks, how to plan for retirement by investing. Okay. Awesome. This gives me good context. So here we go. My core values for investing. Let me first of all talk about the fact that when I teach, I am not a financial guru who has never made mistakes. I actually think that part of my teaching authority comes from the fact that I made mistakes. When I was practicing for case interviews in consulting, if I was always perfect and I got an A on every single thing, I could now help 10,000 plus people get into consulting because I wouldn't know where the mistakes and the rough areas were. Instead, my first interview, they told me, was the worst that they had ever seen. And so I have a lot of now ability to explain how you go from the worst you have ever seen to an interview in your final round at Bain on the spot, right? So just so that you know, I'm going to walk through a couple of my mistakes here. You can make these mistakes and you're going to be fine. You can also avoid them by learning from people like me. One of the first mistakes that I made was that when I left Bain, I had the opportunity to join an early phase startup based in Atlanta in financial technology that sold 12 months later for $300 million. I would have been employee number 6 and I would have had a huge piece of stock in the company. So that was kind of a bummer, right? And I kind of, the company had been built by people who sold before. I didn't have peace about doing it, which is why I didn't do it. But that was a financial mistake. I invested $250,000 in my first business venture. There were 4 business partners. And two of the business partners moved the money into an offshore account into a country that was very difficult to retrieve it from, spent it, and then ran away. So that was a real bummer, right? It wasn't, I had about $265,000. So $250,000 was a major loss for me. It wasn't extra money. It was everything I had saved up until my career at that point. And I had been like eating, broccoli and like putting every penny away. It was a major issue. In 2008, I sold everything in the stock market panic, and I was like, I'm going to hold cash, and I had absolutely no plan for what to do with it. In 2011, my husband and I were looking at buying rental properties. We bought two, and we had the chance to buy a third one. There was a house that was listed, and we call it our $55,000 house. It ended up selling for $58,000 or $59,000. But I told myself that I was being disciplined and it was too expensive. That house today is worth like $375,000. I could have made money on it on the first day. We could have probably flipped it, but we definitely could have just held it for rental. It was a really dumb financial move not to buy, not just that house, but that represents other houses that we didn't walk into and do deals on during that season of our life. And then in March 2020, I sold a huge packet of equities without a plan for what to do with it. Right. So, I've made mistakes. Like Warren Buffett says, right, when everyone's selling, you buy, when everyone's buying, you sell. Like, I just do whatever sometimes emotions will drive me to do. Yet at the beginning of what we talked about, I would have said I am a really good investor. I'm good at investing. And so I've made mistakes, and I just want to encourage you again, investing is not being error-free. But what I have done through my mistakes is I've developed systems, I've developed plans and practice for how to deal with both upsides and downsides of situations. And I've become really good at investing for that. My 4 big ideas, right, are number 1, investing starts when your present and your future are taken care of. Your present is that you spend less than you make, and your future is that you have saving systems that you are maxing out. So if you don't have a Roth IRA that is completely funded and other IRA or other 401k investment vehicles that are fully funded, this is US focused, so the equivalents of those are true in the US. If you do not own your own home, and if you have any debt left, you are not ready to invest. And that's cool. But investing is not playing the lottery to catch up for other mistakes. And if you don't right those issues, you will invest in the same way that led you into the trouble that you kind of are in maybe financially now. So it's really important that you clean up financial mistakes. You can do a little bit of practice investing, but real investing like I'm going to talk about today can really only happen on a good foundation. Otherwise, right, the rains come, the foundation goes away. The second kind of big idea is that investing can be passive or active, and both are valuable. I am not a subscriber to the 4-hour work week. I think you should work more when you're younger. I think you should work hard. I think you should work for the most money that you can make in a job that you really enjoy. But I don't think that sitting on a beach somewhere outside of a community, outside of building something that has some kind of legacy is a purpose. But like, I'm not trying to become Instagram famous for hanging out in some beach location somewhere doing nothing in a 4-hour work week. And I will talk to people all the time whose goal is to do that. I can't help you with that. I can help you make a lot of money. I can help you build a great business. I can help you establish an amazing family, incredible community, but I'm not going to be able to help you work less necessarily. And so, active investing and passive investing are both really good. But there are different ways to think about it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Number 3, good investing is measured by time horizon as much as percentage return. I had somebody recently, and he was like, look, I'm thinking about like doing this, advanced financial move by like pulling money out of this house and buying this one and then flipping that one and then moving it into here. And I was like, okay. And he said, what's your target rate of return? And I said, up. And he just sat there and he was like, you don't have, like, it's not like 11.4%. And I was like, no, my target rate of return is up. Like, I want to make more than I could in other alternatives. And the more active I have to be, the more I want to make. And he was like, wait, you don't have a number? And I was like, no, you can't eat a number, right? Like, I'm looking to make money. That's what I look to do. And I don't look to do it in the most complicated way. And I don't look to optimize everything. I had the opportunity to take out a ton of money when interest rates were low, and I didn't do it. Why? Because I didn't need the money. Like, it was a huge pile of work to re-leverage everything, and it cost me something to do it. And I was already winning in every area. And so I didn't need that money. And people were mystified by this. So I can't necessarily help you beat every market every time. What I can help you do is I can help you make money on your money, right? I can help you make enough so that you can do more with your money. I can help you grow. These are the things that I can help you do. But good investing is measured by success. And I'll tell you just an example of that, right? My husband and I, when we used to invest, had really kind of defined rules. Where we've moved now is, do we want to own it in 30 years? If we don't, we don't buy it. And so the time horizon can be a big shaper there. And the final is that the return of investing is always to build people and or places, right? We don't buy slums and keep them as slums. We buy broken houses, we fix them up into nicer places, and we develop communities. We build in our companies the people that we work with and ourselves. People includes us. Like, we are better managers today than we were last year, we hope, than we were a decade ago. And so if you're investing if the goal of it is to be completely isolated and completely separated, then I can't help you. Again, my focus is always going to be on financial gain that comes from doing well at building. So those are a couple of my core principles. I'm going to break each one.
We'll be right back after this quick message. If you find yourself lucky enough to join the team at Investor Group Services, you'll immediately discover that IGS is not your typical cookie-cutter strategy consulting firm. At IGS, you will regularly interact with senior-level management and clients and take ownership of client relationships early on in your tenure. In addition, top performers can increase their earnings through the firm's uncapped performance-based compensation model and be put on the fast track to a management role. Sound too good to be true? You can learn about open roles and apply today by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting igsboston.com.
So big idea one is invest last. And what I'm going to do is I'll teach through each one of these. I'll have about 5 to 8 minutes on each one, and then I'll take a couple questions at the end. So first of all, today and tomorrow come first, and then you invest. Right? So the investing equation is how much you make minus how much you spend minus how much you short save, which is savings for things that you expect to spend like in a year, right? You save maybe for your taxes, or you save for your next car, or you save for car maintenance, or you save for a trip that you're going on, minus how much you long save, which are savings for retirement that you actually plan, hopefully never to spend, but just plan to have invested for you so that you can live on those things later in your life. Long savings includes the purchase of a home. The remainder of that is how much you have left to invest. And so one of your goals of doing the other pieces before you get here is to have something left over. And then as you increase any one of the first things, how much you make in any way, whether it's working more, having more businesses, increasing your number of investments, minus all of the other pieces, how much you spend, short save and long save, then whatever is left over is going to be there. And so many people take their small amounts of non-excess capital and they try to invest it to catch up for poor planning in other areas. And I watch people do this all the time. And my answer is don't do it, right? If you haven't finished your maximizing of the saving systems, if you don't have all your stuff paid off, like even if you succeed in the short run, you're going to operate with a broken bucket. It's going to be leaky. You're not going to succeed in the long run. So get all of the fundamentals in place and then start with $100. Start with the 100 will become 500. The 500 will become 5,000. The 500,000, the 5,000 will become 500,000. And you graduate from stage 3 never. Okay, so once you get here, like you can rush to get there, but once you get there, you never end. There's not like a place where all of a sudden you've made enough money and you stop investing, because the purpose of this is building people and places. And so you're going to do that hopefully until you die. Once you have done all of the rest of the things, you are probably going to be financially secure. And some of you will have enough to actually never even work as well. But investing can be equated to financial retirement, not necessarily a lack of work. So when your legacy for your children's children is complete, when you can see out multiple generations, when everyone in your city who can work has a job, employment has been created, problems have been solved, and your community is fully funded, you're done with investing, which again, I've never met a community that was like, we're good, right? Everything's done. So the ones that I think are the most remarkable feel like they have actually solved a lot of today's problems and are working on tomorrow's. That's what makes me really excited. So big idea 2 is just invest. Like when you have your first extra $100, extra $500, extra $5,000, don't focus on how little you put in, because your goal is not to use this to catch up to anything. Your goal is to make something with what you start with, because if you can make 10% on $500, you can do it on 500,000 too. And so your goal is to invest in one of or multiple of these 3 things. Okay. So I'm going to just walk through each one of these, and I'm going to go through a little bit more detail on each of them. The first one is real estate. Real estate, when you own it and someone else rents it from you, is a savings account that renters pay into. If you are renting from somebody else, you are funding their savings account. The real estate is the optimal use of debt if you follow the 3 rules of investing. And I have another slide where I'm going to follow this. But my husband and I created investment rules. And on the first house that we ever bought, we invest in residential real estate. It's been really reliable, super easy, very cheap to get into it. And so anyone can do this. You can also take the house that you buy for yourself or a condo that you buy for yourself, and I've walked a lot of people through how to do this in their one-on-one sessions with me. And you can buy it and live in it for 1 year and then convert it to a rental. You move out of it, you rent it, and you purchase your second home. That's actually the most cash efficient way to build a real estate portfolio. My kids, I hope, will own their first real estate by the time they're 25. And I hope that they will own a full portfolio by the time they're 35. The second one is securities. By the way, P.S., no one in my extended family on either side ever owned anything more than the home. And then one person owned a second home. But nobody ever had a rental home. Nobody in my entire extended family. So this was something new that my husband and I had to learn. The second one is securities. Securities is buying a portion of another company or debt issuance or a bond. And when people talk about investing in stocks, this is why it feels very complicated. But you are either buying a promise to pay back, a municipal bond, a government bond, or a company bond, which is issued with a set rate of return, or you are buying equity, which means that if they make money, you make money. If somebody else thinks that they will make money, it will change the price of it, and you will also make money. And so securities can be bought by buying index funds, which is basically buying a basket of securities. It's like going to the grocery store and saying, pick out one of every piece of fruit. Stocks, individual stocks, are representative of individual companies. Or some stocks now are also their own funds, right? So if you buy Berkshire Hathaway, if you buy Warren Buffett's company, it's actually multiple companies that Berkshire Hathaway, the holding company, owns. The same with REITs, real estate investment trusts. They own multiple pieces of real estate, and you can buy a portion of their whole portfolio. Then target retirement funds, which is one of the ways that I invest in my savings system. I just put my money in the simplest place, which is I say I'm going to retire in, like, let's call it 2050. I tell them, invest my money optimally. It's your job to do that. Make me money on my money, right? And my job is to make enough to put $56,000, $58,000 into my retirement fund every year. The third one is companies. And this is when you're buying directly into companies, because securities are technically also ownership of companies. It's just fractional ownership. For companies, you can build them. You can start something with $0. You can build a website and a landing page, and you can sell something. And I am such a big fan of that. And I am absolutely in love with services businesses, which is why I don't ascribe to the 4-hour work week, because I think if you can sell your time, you should sell your time. The second one is buying them. I bought Management Consulted. I worked for it for a year. I got into a fight with the owner, really good guy, but he was onto other things. I offered to buy it from him. Then we moved on. So I bought that in a direct transaction from him, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. You can invest in companies. Somebody else is starting a company or owns a company, and you can buy some of their shares. Or you can do angel investing, which is investing in an early phase company. This is all of investing. Like, there isn't anything else other than this to do. There's nothing else in the universe that you can invest in. Now, there are different ways to do it. And so I'll talk about each one of them in a little bit more detail. But I just want to encourage you, this is why you want to get started. Like, you want to buy a stock when you're as young as you can directly, and you want to understand what the company does. You want to buy real estate, and you want to buy it for yourself, and then you want to rent it out to somebody else. And once you've done it once, you can do it 100 times. And you want to buy or start a company. And doing all of these things is a big part of the investing portion of what we'll talk about. Here are my rules for securities, right? They should be simple. Something that is easy is good. They should be long-term. I actually asked my grandmother at one point, Grandma, what's your investing rationale? She said, when I buy it, I plan to never sell it. So that actually takes a huge amount of stress out of watching a portfolio. If your goal is to buy something that you think is going to increase as population increases or GDP increases, right? So she buys like pharma companies, banks, railroads, like she buys them and plans to hold them forever. She doesn't worry too much about what she spends on them. She just knows that in 20 years, she'll be glad that she bought them. And she doesn't try to overtime the price. And I think sometimes like we should just be like grandma, focus on the long term. And then third, understand, I try to make sure that I can explain what the company does and why they will be around in 20 to 30 years. My target rate of return for securities is something better than a CD or a savings account. If I can make 1 or 2% in a savings account, 2 or 3% in a CD, I'm looking for something more than that. I don't actually set a 3%, 5%, 9%. I don't worry super much about whether something is dividend paying or equity oriented. These are my rules. Right now, I'm buying a lot of dividend paying stocks, but that hasn't always been the case. I felt like in about 8 months ago, I was teaching some money camps. I felt like I should do more of what I was talking about. And so I started putting money every month into buying an individual security. It was something that I hadn't worked on learning more about. And so I started doing that about 8 months ago. So I put now $5,000 of my money that I make in all my different ventures into a security that I have a short list of them that I pick once a year. And then I kind of pick one based on a certain time. I don't worry about overtiming the price. I'm never planning to sell them. Our 3 rules of real estate are that if we rent them, I should be able to collect rent on the property. And this would be a single family home. I would think about it per door if you bought something that was multifamily. In our case, right now, our goal is $500 more than the mortgage, the taxes, and the insurance. We manage also to 0 vacancy, so we don't do a lot of rent increases. Our goal is to hold them for our lifetime and to have them occupied, not necessarily to maximize our rate of return in every season. Also, for owning, one of our rules is that we would be happy to live in the unit. That helps us find great renters and stay away from buying based on speculation. And then selling, I can add value and sell it for more than it's worth. Maybe it's ugly. Maybe there's a den that could become a bedroom. I'm looking at a property right now. It has 11 acres. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. And it's a huge, ginormous house. Well, in our area, that house would be worth $250,000 more if it just had 2 more bedrooms. I figured out a way to make 2 more bedrooms. It's like a maybe $2,000 fix, right? So pay attention to those kind of opportunities if you're thinking about real estate. What is my target rate of return? My focus for real estate is better tax advantages and returns than a security, right? Because I have to work a lot more, right? I own it directly. I can't just sell it like tomorrow. I can't just call a broker and be like, sell that stock. That money is not liquid. It's going to require more work for me. But we every year make a significant amount of money on our real estate tax-free. So that becomes really beneficial. Let me actually just say 1 or 2 other things. When we're recommending that people buy real estate, your general goal should be 4 or more units in a single area, unless you're just practicing. If you're practicing, buy 1. But if you're thinking about buying real estate as an investment strategy, you will have no fun if you buy small amounts of real estate. It will be very, very fun and very, very financially rewarding if you buy large amounts. So you should just plan on buying 4 or more units over time, like not at once, but over time. And then our rule for companies is that if we buy them 100%, I know that I'm buying a job. My job is to work for this. Right now we're looking at buying a winery. That's a job. Right? We need to staff it. We need to sell it. We have to set up the Instagram accounts. Like we have to do everything. And our assumption is that we will run it. If we buy late stage companies, if the money that we're putting in is more important than our time, then we plan on debt. We want a standard rate of return, not equity. And we want to be happy with what the company is making today. And then if we buy early stage companies, and friends of mine in Atlanta own a brewery, they did a debt issuance. Like we were like, yeah, we'll do that. And then early stage companies, I expect that I need to do 10 of them for one of them to succeed. So I have to know, again, like kind of like real estate, that I have to put more money in order to get to a place where it's likely that my money will work. It's possible that 0 and 10 could work. It's possible that 2 and 5 could work. But 1 and 10 is kind of the pretty traditional number for that. And what am I looking for companies? Better returns and income than securities and real estate. My business is by far my best returning asset. It also requires the most amount of time and the most amount of stress for me. And so I relay what I am willing to do in the investments that I get based on relative returns, not on absolute returns. Fantastic. Well, if any of you have, direct or specific questions about a business that you want to buy, about I can't give you any stock advice. Like I mentioned, I'm not a registered financial planner, but I am absolutely more than happy to talk about real estate or companies. You can always feel free to send us an email. And again, if you're not registered and subscribed to our podcast, please make sure that you're on that Strategy Simplified podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. We are super, super grateful for everything that you do as a part of our community. And we hope that you'll follow along. If you're interested in working with us again on consulting or breaking into consulting, then we're happy to help with that. But everything related to Money Camp is free. Thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to another episode. Really glad you're here with us. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really does help the show reach more new listeners. So we'd love your rating, your review. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you again very soon.